Well, hello and welcome back, everybody. I've just got a few messages to say before I start the video. It won't be long. The first is yesterday I reached 100 subscribers. So thank you so much for all the support you've been giving. Absolutely beautiful, really appreciated, and it's helping grow the channel. Also, very recently, one of my videos for the first time has gone over 1,000 views, so that's amazing. So again, thank you for all the support, all of those guys out there who are prepared to like and subscribe. So wonderful. Now, one of the things I did a little while ago is I did a Blood Angel video, and during that video I said when I hit 100 subscribers I will give away the miniatures from that video. So here is another picture of those Blood Angels. If you would like to win them, please put your name in the comments below and put Blood Angels, and I'll draw a lucky winner and I'll ship those out. And when you receive them, if you could just comment on them, see what you thought to the figures, that would be absolutely brilliant. As a little bonus, I've also been painting up some Necrons. I'm trying to decide on what colour to go with Necrons. And this little fella, and a little bit of a close-up here. If you think you would like to own that miniature, again put your name in the comments below and I will post out the little Necron. And if you like him, please do put comments in afterwards so that you can tell everybody what you thought of the miniature when you actually got it close up. Now, as you know, I've been painting High Fleet Morgoth, which is the dark green and black scheme that you see now. I wanted a jungle themed High Fleet as my first Tyranid army, and that's the journey I'm going on. I'm hopefully taking you with me on that, and I'll show you some more miniatures shortly. But as a little bit of a treat for my sons, I have two boys. When I say boys, 27, 25, not really boys, but still think of them that way. One of them is collecting Tau, one of them is collecting Tyranids, and I wanted to just give them a little treat. Now, I'm sure there is no chance they will watch this video, so I think I'm safe in publishing. So what I'm going to do is, for my youngest who's collecting Tyranids, he's doing High Fleet Leviathan. So today I'm going to do a video on doing a GRIMDARKish looking Broodlord. Now, Leviathan, apart from the carapace, is quite a bright scheme, but I want to tone some of it down and give it some of a more of a bleak look. And I'll show you the steps I'm taking to try and get that look. So only one thing really left to say. To the table! Let's get some painting done, guys. So here's the Broodlord in all his glory. Nice grimdark look. If you want to see how we completed this look, please do watch the video to find out. Well, hello everybody. Here's the prepared miniature. The base is simply Vallejo black. So there's the colour reference for you. And then the miniature I've base coated in the new range of Pro Acryl Bright Ivory to give it a nice vibrant punch to start with. And then one of the very first things that we need to do is start to think about where the shadows are going to be, because this guy's going to be grimdark. And then one of the little secrets that you can apply to miniatures is that if you do heavily dark in the lower areas, and then come up to your lighter schemes in the top half, then that will tend to give you a bit more of a menacing look to your miniature. So all this underside we're going to look at concentrating some shadows on, and then in the lower limbs, especially the legs, and maybe in the fingers we'll work some darkness in as well. So we've got to decide on what colours we're going to use for that. And what I've decided is that when you look at Leviathan, there's a lot of pink involved, so we need to get a transient colour of that and blend it down. So we will be using Magos Purple when we're doing some of the colouring in. We will be looking at keeping some of the red tones, some of the pinks, the reds, but in a darker shade. So I've decided to go to Guilliman Flesh, which is a sort of brown, but it's got reds in there. And then for the shadow, we're also going to use Black Templar contrast, but we're going to do a blend of those. Now, one of the things with these contrast paints is that they are quite heavily saturated, and you do need a thinner blend of it. And a little secret is that I know there are lots of mediums out there to thin it down, but one excellent way to give yourself a nice thinner wash from these colours is to use something very simple, which is airbrush thinner. And it really dilutes the solution down. What we're going to do is we're going to mix these colours together until we get a colour we're happy with. So what we'll do first is we'll put the black in, because that's going to be our base shadow tone. Okay, so that's just obviously black. As we go through, we will close each lid and move it out of the way. Just 1 second. I'll pop some thinner in, give it a good dollop of thinner. We want a nice mobile solution, and we don't want a lot of colour saturation in it. And as you can see already, that is still quite heavily saturated in colour, and we are going to add a bit more colour to that, so it's only going to get stronger. So the next thing we're going to do, and obviously give these bottles a good shake, get them all nice and mixed up. We'll clean off the brush so we don't introduce content to our other paint pot and end up changing our colour. We'll give that a quick wipe. And we're just trying to get a little bit of purple in there so that we can see the shade. Okay, just wipe off a bit of excess. Get another good amount across. Start to have a look at the colour again. And I think you can see, although that is black, there's definitely essence of purple in there. And when I wipe it on the cloth, you can see the purple coming through very nicely. So I'm happy with that. And then just to give it a little bit of the redness that will darken down the pink, but also blend it in with our other colours. And that, hopefully, gone a little bit muddy. Just give the brush a clean. Let's see what that looks like. I think I want a little bit more purple in there actually, so we'll go back to the purple. And these little trays that I'm using, I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I buy a lot of miniatures from Reaper. So these are just the plastic containers that I bought the miniatures from, but they're just so useful for mixing paints, varnishes, PVA glue, all that type of stuff. I will just add a little bit more thinner, because I'd rather start too light than I would go completely dark to start with and trash the model. And I think we'll go even thinner yet. So the reason I'm showing you this process is often what you'll see on the screen is pre-mixed paints, and it's a bit confusing as to what levels of mixture you're meant to be looking for. So I thought I'd actually leave this bit in the video so that you can actually see the process I'm going through, and it is just literally getting to a point where you like the colour. And what we'll do is we'll just gently pop a few blobs on. I'm looking to try and sit this in the recesses and give myself a lot of natural shade, and then we'll come up to the knee, underneath the knee joint, and you can see it's gone on quite nicely and quite thinly around the claws themselves. Maybe just come a little bit darker around these bases here. And because it's so thin, surprisingly, with the thinner applied, it just runs into the creases, settles nicely on the lower portions, and it does half of the painting work for you. And we're just going around and applying that. I'm also going to apply it in here in the rib cage, because that obviously gets a lot of shade in there. So that we can just blob in and move it around. We'll go for the back of the head as well. I want some nice strong shade at the back of the head. And you can see what a lovely base coat this is creating, because it is so thin, it's just moving straight in, giving us instant relief on the miniature. I'll bring it a little closer in a second, just so you can see the paint in action. but any surface that's hiding away in a corner will give that a coat of paint. So we'll go down the insides here, and then we'll go onto the under surfaces of the model, and I want the legs to be a nice strong dark tone, so we're going to slap a load on the bottom end of the legs, like I said, to try and get us a bit more of that grimdarky type of look in the miniature. Okay, right, we'll do the other side of the head and neck. Now when we do the carapace, we're going to do the carapace in Naggaroth purple, so actually let's start getting the shoulders ready to blend. So we'll actually put some darkness into the join of the armour where it's going to be naturally a very dark armour carapace anyway, and then it will hide any mess that we make when we actually start to put the Naggaroth on. But this is, I mean, this, you can see how lovely and thin this is, how well it's going on. It's just going exactly where we want it, into those creases. And that's the thing that's doing all the work for us here, is the airbrush thinner. It's just acting like a nice mobile medium for us, and it's just moving the paint around. All I'm doing is actually blobbing it on. There's no skill here. Oh, sorry, I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of skill being applied here. It's going to be very hard to replicate doing this. And then I don't really want to extend the darkness up the arm too much. So we're just going to apply lots of nice strong colour to the extremities. We're going to leave these arms at the hand end, we're going to leave them nice and black and dark. But we're going to retain the colour of Leviathan as we come into the arms and the main body. I don't want to lose the Leviathan colour completely, but I do definitely want this nice grimdark look. And I must say that's gone on beautifully. I may just touch up the legs once more. And the hive node, or whatever it is he's stood on, that's going to also go in the colours, and under there is obviously very shaded, so let's give that a good whack of colour as well. Okay, so close up, let's see what we've done. I think you can see fairly safely what's going on there. We've just applied nice strong colour tones. What we'll do now is we'll clean our brush and we'll just tidy up a little bit. So anywhere that we've encroached on that we don't really want that stronger colour, we'll start to just pull the colour away a little bit. I actually do want a bit of strong colour at the bases here, so I am going to, at the claws, I'm going to leave quite a bit of strong colour at the base of the claws, and you'll see why later. Oh, tongue as well, that's it. The mouth area, obviously that's a very dark cavity, so we'll bang some darkness into the mouth. I won't bring it too far down the tongue, and I will actually move some of it away. Sorry, there we go. So you can see I've just popped a load of purple into the mouth. We can paint over that and lighten it up a little bit later, but I do want some nice shade created, and we'll put some shade on the thorn as well. And then we'll pull a load of the colour back off, because I don't want it too dark there. Right, on to the next step. And for the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to use Naggaroth Night, and we're going to cover all of this carapace. Now, we do have some vents hidden on the carapace here, so what I'm going to do is I am actually going to drop some colour into those first. So I'll put the Naggaroth Night to one side, and we'll use a little bit of Squid Pink as a change of colour. Just 1 second. And again, we'll create a wash exactly the same as we did with the contrast colours. So we're talking about lots of colour being available in obviously a base layer paint. So we'll get quite a bit of thinner applied to that. And then we'll mix it in with our mixing brush. This is obviously not a painting brush. And I do want it a little bit thinner than that. So a little bit more. And you can be very generous with your thinner, because you can always add more paint, and it's much better to go too thin than it is to go too strong. We can always layer up if we need. Okay, so let's have a little look at this. So we may as well go around the whole model, and that is just going to drop in like the other one did. That's beautiful. So what we'll do is all the areas where we want some of the pink in all of these tiny vents. Grab the air bubble, get rid. It doesn't matter if you wash over, because don't forget this is going to go Nagaroth. So Nagaroth is going to hide anything that we dare do to this. But we need to know the areas that we're avoiding. And this will just drop straight into the areas, and you can see that it's, as I paint on, it's definitely strongly highlighting the area, so we can see exactly where we're going to be painting. Now the place we're going to have to be a little bit careful, and I'm going to change the size of my brush down to a much smaller brush. So the reservoir in this brush is going to be much smaller, and therefore I'm able to drop less paint on. And I'll also just touch it on the side and make sure that it's not carrying, and you can see the excess drops coming off. And I can have a little bit of an experiment on one and just see, is that, oh, well actually you can see one touch and I've coloured the vent. And that was just a small amount of paint. And again, I'll just dab off the excess look on the side there. And I'm carrying virtually nothing in the brush, but because the thinner is on board, just a dab. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Too busy watching what I was doing. So what we'll do is we'll do that once more. So we'll take off the excess on the side of the palette, virtually nothing on the brush, and then nice clear right in the middle of the shot for you, and I'll just literally just dab and touch. And that paint just runs straight to where I want it. Let's get that in the mod. So you can see I'm not overlaying onto the skin. It's going in the recesses. I'll go around all the vents on the model and do that. And while I've been messing around with this, you can see that my original base coat is starting to dry. But what I will do is we'll apply the pink to all of these vents. We'll then do the Nagaroth. We'll have a look at how dry the base layer is, and we won't do anything until that is dry once we've done these two steps. So I'll quickly work around the rest of the model, and then we'll come back and apply the Nagaroth. Right, so I've run around the model. All the vents are coloured in pink. We will just, with a wet brush, you can see there's a little bit of overrun on some of these. We'll just get a wet brush and just wipe off the excess. Don't want lumps of discoloration to be on the model. Although we are going to paint this in a second and then dry brush it, and that'll remove any of those marks that we've made. See, you don't have to be too careful, don't worry too much. The idea of this is that it's a fairly quick paint scheme, and it should get your models out on the table fairly quick. So now we're going to go around the model with Nagaroth. So we'll move some Nagaroth onto my wet palette. And with a nice slim brush, I will just gently go around this top carapace and just apply this lovely dark purple. And we're going to go right up to the edges here. And because we left the shade as we do the edges, it's already given us that lovely shadow in the shade, so that worrying about catching the model isn't too much of a big deal. And I'm just going to work my way around. I'll do this and then we'll come back once I've actually been careful and gone around and applied it all. So I've just been around the model, one coat of Nagaroth so far. What I have done is, this is Black Templar. Oops. And I'm now mixing a bit of water with some Black Templar, and I've thinned it down a little bit, just a little bit of extra water into it, just so it moves better on the model and doesn't saturate too heavily. And then what we're going to do is all the little recesses that there are, is we're just going to drop the Black Templar into the recesses, just creating some extra relief, some extra shading, a little bit under there, and it just gives us a little bit more depth to the Naggaroth. And then as we do the transition and the highlights, it's going to make life easier. It's going to, well, not easier, but it will make the model look more natural. It'll give that shade and make it more interesting to look at. Okay, so I'll work my way around the rest of the purple. We'll also do the recesses on this vegetation that is, I don't know, hive creation that he's stood on. And we'll just run it up a little bit into any of the little recesses. And then as we do our next layers above, it will drive the colour, and it'll pop the colour more because there's so much shade for it to work against. Okay. Right, so the next step is hopefully to blend in all of those colours together and give us a wash that will set the tone. So we're going to go for Citadel Screamer Pink, which I think is a fairly, oh, this one's a bit, I think I did replace this one actually. I think I've got a spare up there, but that's getting a bit dry, but we will use it anyway. We will eke out the last of the paint, and we want this as quite a dilute wash. So a mixture of airbrush thinner and water to thin it all down. But I do want quite a strong wash here. Right, okay, so we'll test it a little on a little area of the model. So I'll dry the brush out a lot, by the look of this. And we'll test it on the tail section and just see just how strong a pink this is coming through as. Oh, that's way too strong, isn't it? Let's get more water in here. I think one of the things on a lot of the videos is they don't really show you just how dilute they do make things. Let's get rid of some of that. Just we'll just brush that off. Right, okay. So if we just dab it on, this is really quite weak now, but what we can do is just suck with the brush the colour back off where we think it's too strong. And we are going to cover all the vents as well and give them a good coating. The back end of the carapace, where it's Naggaroth, we will actually catch that as well, and it's sort of what we're trying to do is trying to blend all the tones together, because we've got different shades, different levels of saturation, and we need some tone over the top to bring it all together. So hopefully that's what we're going to achieve here. But all of our preset shadows will act as natural shadows. We're going quite strongly on any undersurface, because again we want that deep saturation. We're going for this GRIMDARK type of a look. We'll pull some of the paint off. It's a bit heavily pulled under there. We'll move the paint around as well, that will dilute it as well. Try and get rid of the bubbles, and we want, in any joint, we want some natural settlement of the paint in a joint. Give us that shade. And we'll try and catch everywhere and get this this pink through that, the very recognisable vibrancy of Leviathan. And then anywhere that we think we've gone a bit too strong, we will take the brush back and we'll just pull some of the paint off, because it's so stuffed with thinner and water at the moment that it's going to be very, very easy to move around. But you can see on the hands here, because we've already put these dark tones in, how nicely it's all automatically giving us some lovely shade. So I'll just go around the model, popping on all the paint, and then where we think we want to remove some, we will do in a second. But I want to get it all on before it starts to get anywhere near dry. Well, that's a really high level of saturation with the colours there. So now we need to start to pull some of this paint off. Okay. Right, so clear the brush and let's start to do exactly what we've just said and get rid of some of these puddles. And just dab it on the paper. And we're just reducing down some of these upper surface areas, automatically giving them a bit brighter a colour. Just a little bit back on there. Mustn't miss the vents on the back. And gently working our way around the model. And obviously the legs, where we've put lots and lots of saturation with the dark shades, they're not going to come quite as light, which is exactly the point. I actually think I quite like this deep puddling here. I think I'm actually going to rework some of it back on and then just be patient and wait for it to dry. The richness of the pink is quite appealing. Give the tongue a good coat. And we'll do the same this side in these sort of spines at the bases. We'll make them nice and dark, but that we can retrieve some of that later as we put some of the upper coats on. But that gives us a nice saturated feel, which we're going to highlight even further in the next layer. So that's starting to bring everything together. I'm just taking the excess off the Nagaroth. We don't want that to come too bright, and certainly don't want any of that in the recesses ruining our shade that we just put on a few moments ago. The drying time for the Nagaroth, when I went away and left it, was approximately 1 game of Dota. I don't know, about 30 or 40 minutes, something like that. It was enough time to make a cup of tea and have a game of Dota. Right, just making sure we're not missed anywhere. Making sure we're happy with the saturation of the colour. Just dragging it everywhere it needs to be, making sure we're not missed anything. Okay. So you can see those nice dark shades on the hands, again in the feet. Yeah, I'm quite pleased that it's looking nice. We just need to work a few layers later on and get some darkness back in some other areas. But what was that? That was a couple of minutes work, and it's looking at a lot changed now. So we'll come back in a moment when that's dried. That's probably going to be about another 40 minutes, and then we'll do the next step. Right, well, for the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can finish off the carapace on the back, and then we'll move over to the skin and then finish off the talons. And as we go, we'll also process the bio thing he stood on. So let's make a start. So what we're going to do is start to do the highlights. I will get some Nagaroth, and we'll get a new corner to the palette so that we can actually see what we're doing. We'll get a brush to take the paint across. Get that clean. Fresh bit of kitchen roll for wiping clean. And then we're going to also, as well as Nagaroth, we're now going to move to Gene Stealer Purple. Fairly standard transition colour for Gene Stealers and the Broodlord. Clean the brush again. Highlights, we're going to go with some Fulgrim Pink. Okay, I'll clean the brush again. So what we'll do is we'll start on an area of the carapace, and we'll do one of the spine areas and the edge of the here, and then I'll go around and finish off. So what we'll do first is we'll mix some of the Nagaroth and the Gene Stealer together. Just make sure there is no moisture sat in the brush. And so all the raised areas we want to just pick out and give them some definition. So just gently stroke towards. I'm going to try to aim for some, because it is still quite a dark colour, I'm going to aim for some decent penetration into the carapace, because I'm going to go quite a lot brighter with some of the other colours, and therefore we can afford to give some good coverage here to make room for the highlights. Sometimes what you do is you get a bit focused on that it's highlights and not covering very much, and you end up with like highlights with nowhere left to go. So we are giving decent coverage and giving ourselves plenty of room to manoeuvre. And then when we do the top of the spine here, we'll come from above and we'll just stroke upwards. We will just catch the edges and a little bit more of like the ridges on the spine pieces, and then on the top of the spine what we'll do is we'll create ourselves, there's like an elliptoid shape, and we'll do like the top 2/3 of the elliptoid in a lighter colour. And what I'll do is I'll just work on this section here, and then I will cover the rest once we've actually gone through this together. So now we'll drop to the gene stealer, and we'll go over the same areas, but just simply just picking out slightly less and leaving a little bit more of a stripy pattern to make it look a little bit more animalistic. Not going in any gashes like this, definitely not going into those. And then we'll run the brush along the edge. So I'm using the side of the brush and just letting it lie on the edge of here, just to make sure that the very edge has a coat on it. And then we'll come to the front, and again we'll work our way just around there. We'll do these like spine processes that come out the side. We'll probably go for about half of one of those. The carapace at the side of it, just little dabs across it. And then the structure that's around the spine itself, we'll dab on that as well. Sort of using the tip of the brush, but also just the side of the tip of the brush. And then when we do the upper section, stroking the side of the brush across the edge before going to work from above. And then just like before, just gently tickling some lines on. And again for our elliptoid shape at the top here, this time we're going to do quite a bit less, but we do want to show that we've caught the light, so, and I'll just do the one above it as well so you can see. So we'll go down the side with the side of the brush, make sure we've caught some definition. And then we'll come to about a quarter of the way, maybe a third of the way. And now we can start to see, I'll do the next one as well, just so that we can actually see how the pattern develops. But working from above, so it just makes it easy to catch the edges of the shape. And then the other thing I'm going to do is where there is the vent, I'm just gently going to work a little bit of paint around the edges of the vent and just highlight the edges of the vent as well. And come on to the edge of this spine process, and then again on here, just catching the edge, midsection of this carapace, because it's it wouldn't be at the edge where the light struck, it would be more in the middle, so we're going to catch that and give it some light there. I'm going to leave that recess completely dark and ignore it. Okay, so that's the next level of layering. I'm going to also just because we've already progressed onto these, I'm going to come across here and just run a line around the edge of the vents. Just catch the edge of those crests there, and here, come down that little process. Okay, so we're working on this front section here mainly, And now we're going to go and mix some full grim pink with some of the Gene Stealer. And this will give us a nice highlight. It'll start to give us a little bit of definition of about where we're going. So, gently. And you can actually, if you watch, I'll catch it in slightly deeper and then bring lines behind it. And it just takes the model sort of deep, the shading deeper into the model, and gives it a bit more of a scratchy type of realism. And then we'll come up onto this crest. We're going to catch a lot less of the crest now, this spiny process thing. And some little lines just on the edge here, towards the middle, don't run it all the way across the edges, and then we'll catch the tops, and we'll follow the line down and just highlight where that is. And again, we'll, rather than going around the whole of the top, because the light's going to be coming from the top here, we're now going to go sort of at the top 2/3. Again, put that line with the side of your brush down. We're now working on the very, very top into the last sort of less than a quarter. And we'd start to see that it is starting to pop a little bit. We'll just put some vent and some lines on here as well. On the edge of the vents themselves. Okay, so we start to see that happening. We'll go for the full grim pink. Just tiny, tiny highlights. And then when we come up onto the top surface, edge of the brush, maybe the top half with the full grim, and just a tiny little highlight in the top. And you can start to see, or you can start to see quite nicely what's going on there. And again, on the one below. Right, so you can see that that has gone from that over to, we're starting to get a bit of shape, bit of colour. I think we're going to put a little bit more light colour over here. Let's bring it a bit closer so we can see better. Okay, so I'm going to work my way around the model and just adding all those details in. I might actually just pop a little bit of white in as well, right on the very highlights, just to give it that real edge pop. And then I can work on the rest and then come back and we'll see what it looks like when it's finished. Okay, so we'll just Just go very, very tip here. Okay, so I think you can start to see what's going on there. I'll work my way around the rest of the model and then we'll come back once I've done it. Right, so I've been around the model and I called the center point here the highlight. So what we did was we started with a highlight this side and worked down as it fell away, and exactly the opposite as it fell away on the other side. So the sun is in the midday position. We then put some highlights, exactly the same shades as we did before, around the carapace. Continued them onto the biome thing that it stood on, the biostructure. And then the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to put some Magos purple into all of the vents, especially the ones on the carapace, again to pull them in and to have that, that's contrast colour Magos purple, and that's again to pull them all together and to give them a bit of uniformity, and probably run a little bit of the Magos purple as well into the shoulder areas and just darken them up again. Right, cereal, bit of water, thin that down a little bit, and then we'll just drop the Magos into these vents and just give them a little bit of extra depth, a bit of darkness, and just make them stand a little bit more prominently, and also into the articulations at the joints as well, and just give those a little bit more depth as well. I'll just bring it a little bit closer so you can see. And it literally is that because I've added water, it just runs nicely into the recesses. We'll just give the edges a little bit of a touch as well, a bit more depth in there. And I'm just going to go around the model, just giving the shadows a bit more depth. Under the tail section as well. A bit more depth into the shadows in the feet. And just all those darker areas, those darker recesses are just going to get an extra spot of Magos just to really darken things up and go for that slightly more grimdark look, as well as emphasising and punching the vents on the arms and legs. And then we can start to do a bit of lightning work around the model and just giving it a bit more vibrancy again. Looking pretty good. Okay, on the head here, just in those little gaps as well, just give it a little bit more. Once we put the highlights in, it'll give it a bit more punch as we put the darkness into the recesses. Back of the neck, veins, jawline, all that type of stuff. Anywhere that there's got lots of contrast on the model, we're going to use that and to give us more punch later on. Okay, I'll just quickly finish off here. Just all those little articulations around the body, and then we'll come back for the next step. So now we need to work on the flesh tones and bring those a bit paler. So for that we're going to go back to the Fulgrim pink, but mix it with a little bit of light flesh. That should give us quite a nice sharp contrast. Things that we're going to be aiming that paint at are on the main flesh. What we'll do is we'll try and give muscle striation and try and make it look like there's some muscle tone there, give the actual muscle some highlights, and then we'll also border the vents on the arms and give some highlight to some upsurface areas. So let's mix a little bit of this stuff together. Okay, and then what we'll do, just get rid of a bit too much excess and gently stroke on these upper surfaces. Just bring it back in again. A little bit on there, and then on the edge of the gums. I always find it quite satisfying starting on the face. I find it quite rewarding, so hence my... Now as we come up the jawline, hence my rush to start with the face. As we come up the jawline, we're sort of using the side of the brush a little here. Just got to be gentle, because if there is a bit too much fluid on the brush, then it will blob a little bit. I may just have a little bit on, but that certainly gives you quite a very quick and punchy look with that, how sharp the contrast is there. Just catch that line inside the mouth as well. And then what we'll do is we will just get a little bit more pink, but I think I'm going to add a little bit of squid pink. Just for doing the top of this head, and I think it will be not quite a sharp a transition, so where the lines are here, just bring those in. And we'll also blend a little bit into the top of the head here. Just catch the edges of the little spiny bits on the head. We can see the veins quite nicely here, so I don't want to go too near them and change them too much. We'll come and do the thorn on his head a little bit later, and we'll just catch the side of his head here, just even out the colour underneath the vein, just make the vein pop a little bit more. And then we'll get some white flesh, just the plain light flesh itself, and just bring that up onto the high cheek, top of the eye, little dot on the nose, tiny dots on the gum line, just to really pop those. I think I might just take the lower portion of the cheek down a shade and just reintroduce a little bit of the screamer pink. I think the lower portion of his cheek just needs to go back down a little bit. Don't want too much paint on my brush. And that, I can just see a little white. That's better. I didn't want that. There was like a little fleck on the line, just making it stand a little bit too proud. We're just slowly dabbing more and more colour back into that lower cheek. And just put a little bit of white back in. That's better. Happy with that. And now the thing that I'm meant to be doing is, I was meant to be concentrating on doing some of these muscle striations. So we've got some of the pink, some of the white together. And what we're going to do is, so the muscle tone will just give it some tiny little lines. Pull those contours in. And just on the upper surfaces, just put some little striations in. And on the borders of the vents, we'll just add a little white line, and then we'll just return the very centre just a bit paler. Give the tops of these a little bit of colour as well. Just gently bringing them back a little bit lighter in tone. We don't want to end up with it looking too steep a gradient, because it is that we're actually trying to capture a bit of a grim dark look. But that said, we do want some highlights in there to make the colours pop a little bit. And I'm going to go get some Screamer Pink and just add that in a little bit. Because as we come down to the hands, they're obviously a lot darker in tone, and where we're doing the highlights, and it's sort of a little bit of a dabbing process as well as painting, and just creating some higher tones to give us a bit more depth to the miniature. And we'll pick up some of the real pale tones and come up onto the edges of the higher surfaces. Get rid of that. Start again. Okay, that's bringing them up nicely. And then on the inside of the hand, we'll do exactly the same, but just on these upper surfaces, we'll just catch an edge. And on the inside of the arm, now trying to get some definition on the edges of the arms. Often I'll try and leave that to colour nowadays, but there's quite a similarity here, so we will actually just put in a little bit of the pinky white and bring some striations up onto this upper surface and take them all the way back. And that's just giving us a little bit more relief. So we're just touching the tops of the vents, we're going around the borders and just leaving a little white line. We're touching up the tops of the spines on the arms and just giving them an extra colour. And where we can see prominent upper surface muscle mass, we've just been touching it up and giving it a little bit of a whiff of colour in there. And some striation to sort of make it look like tensed muscles. I think that's coming together nicely. So I'm going to work my way around the rest of the model. I'll leave the head to finish off properly to show you, but I'll be back in a moment once I've been around the model and got a few more bits done. So as you can see, I've worked my way around the muscles and the vents. And just started touching those up, and then just popping little white lines across the muscle beds. I've already started here, put some little lines into the muscles on the highlights. Done there. Just bring highlights up onto there. And then the other thing is obviously on the dark aspects of the feet is just on the very tips, just giving them some keynote highlights, just so that it does show you where the edges are and just gives them a little bit of prominence. And also we need to catch the tail as well. So we'll take some of our pink flesh mix, and what we're going to do is on the very edges of the crest here, we're just going to catch a little bit of white just to give that some prominence. And then down here where the edge of the tail is in the foreground, if you like, we're going to make it stand out even further by highlighting it as white. And then if I start at the tail and just flick across the crest and put a white light on it there, and then flick back towards the tail on the higher surfaces, or the end of the tail even, we've got this nice dark shadow in here. And then what we'll do is we'll go to pure flesh, and then we'll repeat the process, but gently, just tiny areas. A little bit broken, not actually even full lines. Just on that border. On the top there. Right at the end of the tail. And then on the lower portions of the holes where it would catch the light. There we go, and that's just made that stand a little bit more proud, a little bit more prominent. On the tops of these hips where it would catch light, we'll get a bit of the pink and just dab some little areas in, just to say that's where there's some light coming in. I've already touched up the backs of the calves here. We'll just catch the top of the articulation. Just give it a little bit of light. And I think, because I want the look to be slightly dark and grim, I don't think I'm going to do a great deal more now. Maybe just like some on these very upper surface highlights, just some little bits of extra focus. And maybe down there as well, just a little bit. Just to pull the hand a bit stronger forward. And we'll do the same on the inside to make it match. And I think it just gives it a bit more strength. And then we'll go back to the face. So we've sort of done this side. I do actually want to push a little bit of colour back into that little white bit there. There's by the veins, I think it's just stopping them. There we go. And then I think what we now need to do is go to the white, and this is where we're going to have to be very careful. And I'm holding this away from me, so I don't have the control I really like when I'm doing work like this. Just the camera angle I've got to give you a view, but the upper surface of that vein, we're just catching it, and we'll catch just the edges of here as well. Okay. Teeth are going to be another colour altogether in a second. We're also going to put a white blob in the eye, because the eyes on Leviathan tend on the whole to be yellow. And then these neck veins, we're just going to give them a little bit of a blast of white, whitey pink, or white, whichever, just on the upper surfaces, just to make, and the edge of this rib cage here, just to make it stand out that little bit more. Okay, the tongue is not far off actually. Go to the pink and white mix, and what we'll do is just on this upper surface here, and then down the side, what we'll do is just gently just dab some little blobs on the upper surface, catch the end of the tongue, and it just gives it the impression of like spit and saliva being caught by the light. I managed to miss part of the tongue when we were doing our base coat, so I'm just actually painting in the colour. And then what we'll do is we'll come back to that in a moment and just touch down the sides with the white light to match here. And now I've done it with the pink and white, I will go back and just catch some of the higher surfaces. With some white, just to make it look a bit more like it's reflecting on the saliva on the tongue. Okay. Okay. Down a little bit. Sorry about that. Right, and so what I've done on this side of the face, I'll now repeat on the opposite side of the face. I'm just going to trace these vein lines once more, at great risk of blobbing them, but we'll give it a go. Okay. Now the wash, to be honest, has done an awful lot of the work for us. Now I hope you can see those. You can see those vein lines on the face now. I'm loving the hands. The hands are nice and dark. The feet are nice and dark. I think we're capturing quite a nice grimdark look here. We will do the other side of the face, then we'll come back for the horn, and then we'll get the eyes done, get the claws done, and call it done once we've done the base. So that's now both sides of the face done. And I've put the colours back in the eye, just the little white dots. So we will get some Imperial Fist, and we'll just dot the yellow back in the eyes. Don't want to come off the brush. No. And then touch up the edge of the eye, back with the white. Okay. Right. Now his teeth, and we'll get. Now where should we go with his teeth? I'm thinking we've got a nice amount of pink in there, which sort of, once the teeth go white, will give us blood. And I'm toying with actually just going with this pale flesh tone and just taking the surfaces of them white. Let's have a look, see what that does. Okay. Which doesn't look too bad. We just caught the gap there with the white, so I'll just draw that back in. There we go. Now we'll just catch the edge of the tooth once more. That's better. Right. And I think what we'll do is we'll get a tiny bit of True Blood, and we'll just pop that around the edge of the mouth, and it'll just emphasise where the pink already is and make it look like he's been nibbling on some Space Marines or something. And we'll just run it down the edge of the jaw. Actually, I'm about to paint that finger, so I was just thinking it might be nice to splash a little bit around his fingers, but I'm going to have to paint them first and then splash it. So just a tiny little blood. We'll pull it down onto the teeth a little bit. There we go. All right. Fuck's sake. So let's move on to doing the blades, or the talons. You'll see that earlier on we prepared the blades by putting these dark stripes into the blade, ready for preparation. We're going to use some Evil Sun's Red by Citadel, some Wild Rider Red by Citadel, and we'll also grab some Pale Flesh by Vallejo. Right, we'll mix these on the palette. I'm going to get some black tempera as well. And what we'll do is we'll create a nice dark browny red for the shadow area, and we'll place that around the black stripes that we prepared in the earlier phase. I'll show you on a single blade, and then what I'll do is I'll move on and do the rest of the model in a few moments. So we'll just mix these two together. That's quite a nice dark brown we're getting there. And we'll just pull it down the edge of the blade. We'll try and leave that little bit of area of black that we've prepared and work the brown around it. So just nice gentle light strokes on the edge of the blade, concentrating more as we come into the tip. And making sure that you run onto the edges of both the above and below surfaces so that you've got some nice even coverage. We'll then go on to the Evil Sun's red, and we'll pop a line of red virtually from the top of from the base of the blade, but by the fingers, and we'll run it all the way along the length. We'll then tap it and stroke it into the tip, probably covering around about 2/3. To give us a nice contrast of the red against the black, and just leaving that black vein down the top of the blade. And then we'll swap over to the Wild Rider red. This will start to provide us with a highlight. Let's just get this on the palette. And with the edge of the brush, just stroke it down the edge of the brush. You can see that colour pop as soon as I apply it. A little bit on the tip, probably the bottom quarter of the tip. And then run it up the blade on the bottom edge, making sure you're covering both top and bottom of the blade as you run it along. And then obviously you'd swap to the other side of the blade and just making sure you're getting even coverage. I'm just going to mix a little bit of the pale flesh in, and this isn't to give us a highlight. What we're going to do here is a pre-highlight. So we're going to paint the edge, again very carefully. So the top edge will be a very gentle white line. And then on the blade, we're going to cut some like little hash marks in, and as though it's sort of wear and tear, but on the sharp edge of the blade. And then in a second, what we'll do is we'll go back to the Wild Rider red, and we'll cover over this white, and because it's white with the Wild Rider on, it'll become an even lighter shade, so it'll just really pop the edges of the blade, and it'll also give you those little hash marks to make it look like the blades have been in use, maybe doing some cutting. What I'll do is once I finish this, I'll work around the rest of the model, and we can come back and see what it looks like as a completed set of claws. Talons, both. So here we have the virtually finished model. I'm quite pleased with how grim and dark it's looking, but we need blood. So let's get some applied. I've lost my True Blood, here we are. So True Blood. Now if you're using True Blood and you're using a wet palette, you've got, I don't know, 10 minutes, quarter of an hour before it goes through your wet palette and starts soaking into your sponge, and you've got a clean-up operation on your hands. So just a bit of a warning there. I know I've already left this True Blood from before on a bit too long, so I'm going to be having a bit of a clean-up session myself. So let's get some blood onto the mouth area. A few splatters along the tongue. A few little bits on the hands. into the jawline and the mouth. Okay. And then the only thing left to do is the horn. And what we need to do with that is I've got some black Templar here. And what we need to do is just draw a black line onto this front portion of the horn. And on the opposite side, it's not bad actually on the opposite side, it's not far off there. And then we will go back to some Genestealer purple. And actually we'll mix it with a little bit of squid pink while that's all nice and wet still, and we'll just strike the front edge, catch the paint at the top, blend it in with the paint. If you can see, I'm just running the two paints in together. I'll do the same the other side. And then we'll get some of the flesh tone and mix that in with the colour we've just created. So this is the pale flesh tone from earlier. And that's going to just run up the top of the blade and just give us a little bit more definition down that midsection. Not where the little holes are, we can just give them a little bit of white as well. Make them just stand out a little bit. Onto the other side of the horn. And that is done. Just going to catch the very, I'm just going to catch the very bottom of the horn and just get a little bit of a highlight, because I don't think it stands out quite. Sorry. There we go. So this bottom edge of the horn, I'm just going to catch there. I think that just makes it stand out just a little bit more. And I think that is, you know, not looking far off done. We just need to do the base. That's fairly straightforward. I'm going to bang a layer of Rhinox hide on it, and then I'll come back to you and show you that. So we have Rhinox hide on the base, and we have London Grey, which is a Vallejo colour, on the stonework. And now we just need to blend them through. So Rhinox hide is applied. Next we're going to Doombull brown. This is all now dry brush work, so nice and easy stuff. And so gently tap onto the Rhinox hide all the way around the base. Okay, that's the first layer. I'm not going to clean the brush, I'm going to go straight to Steel Legion Drab. That's another Citadel colour. And get some of that onto the tissue palette. Just another layer on top. And then, last but not least, Xandri dust. Blob of that onto our dry palette, or tissue, whatever you want to call it. Okay, that's looking a bit more like mud. I'll just bring that a little bit closer so you can see. Just a few layers, give it a bit of colour. And then we'll just highlight the stones. So we'll swap over to, after cleaning the brush, we shall swap over to some light grey. And we shall apply that to our sophisticated dry palette. And it is literally, just so you can see what I'm up to over here, it's literally just dabbing it into the tissue, so it's wet, but there's a lot less of it on the brush when we don't dab it completely dry. And then just gently stroke it over the stonework. Okay, and then we'll go to a really pale, in fact what we'll do is we will just put a blob of white into the grey. Not cleaning the brush, and then the white will blend in and take us to a very pale grey. And that we will virtually get off the brush altogether, because when I touch the stone I don't want to put too much on to the stonework. Okay, and that's our stonework done. And now on to the final stretch, and that's just putting on some vegetation. So I've gone for some complementary basing materials. All Gamers Graph stuff, so some violet flowers, some bluey alien ferns, bit of spiky brown to go in the background, and it's turned our base into a lovely little garden. So all I need to do now is unclip and just paint the base black, and this guy is ready for the battlefield. Hope you enjoyed. Well, that was a slightly more extended video than normal. I wanted to try and capture a bit more of the techniques involved, a bit more of the mixing of the paint. Often that's kept to one side and you don't really see that. A bit more about the drying times, because that again you don't hear about. It's just you go from clip to clip in a lot of videos. So I wanted to try and capture a bit more of that for you. It's just extended the video out. I think in the future I'm going to go back to the shorter ones, unless guys you demand that that's what I do, stay with the bigger videos. Thank you for being persistent and getting to the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it, and just again a big thank you for all the likes and subscribes. It's really appreciated, and that only leaves one thing left to say. Are we painting minis yet? Hell yeah! And I'll catch you in the next one. Take care guys.